Welcome to day 8 of our 21 days breaking through your matrix programming. My name is Jona Bryndis.
And I'm Jeff Casper.
And we are going to be your energy coaches and energy trainers here for the next 30 minutes talking about how we can break through some of our persisting patterns and some of our stuckness in life. So breaking through your matrix programming is really just a synonym for, the things that keep us sort of in a place that we are not happy with. And we've introduced quite a few concepts, went into practical implementation with each day's a lesson, and today we want to talk about correcting. How can we make corrections? And I have to say the word correction is something that scares a lot of people. So try not to look at it as a punitive kind of thing, but try to see correction here more in the sense of improving. There is, however, a reason why we use the word correction or correcting, and that is because it implies this active step of doing something, of changing something. So day 8, as we introduced in the beginning, is kind of like the critical part of our journey. A lot of people have already experienced the difficulties involved in trying to make changes, whatever it is that you have identified as your purpose that you want to implement here. And so we are aware that, here at this point, whether it's day 8 or minute 8 or hour 8 or year 8 of this cycle that we've introduced, that you have already experienced maybe a few relapses, maybe a few frustrations, lots of ups and downs. And the idea of making corrections in an active way is something that we have been trying to embed here all along. In other words, we want you to really go into this place of understanding that you do have choices, regardless of what your impediment is, regardless of what the resistance is that you're running into. This can be a physical, an emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic resistance. And as we keep going here with these days, we're going to go deeper and deeper into the layers that are involved in overcoming our resistance. But before we go into the more nitty-gritty part, let us welcome you and thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure so far. I'm actually starting to look forward to every day seeing you guys' names. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you're watching the edited version here on YouTube, know that the reason why we're doing this live is to interact with you, to increase the energy here, and also to integrate, some of your guys' impulses. But you can also text or ask questions or reflect on things that we talked about here in the commentary. So please feel free to interact with us. We come back, reply to your chat texts. All right. So how do we get through the slump? We talked a little bit about that yesterday. However, we need a few more sort of motivational points, I think, at this point. We got to understand that there is a larger picture involved here when it comes to making changes. In a prior session, I've called the evolution of things, or the general process of improving, as something that happens through constant correction. And to go a step further, this is kind of like how nature works. The science or the process of evolution is really going into this reflection that we talked about yesterday. So you do something and then you go into the reflection of how this works. You ask for feedback, you ask within or from the outside. for a feedback, and then you adapt, you correct. All right. So day 7 and day 8, they are connected in that way. That the way we do a reflection and the way we call in our feedback has a lot to do with the efficiency or the effectiveness of our corrective measures. So let's put all this like psycho talk aside a little bit and just go into what it feels like to have all these ups and downs on our journey, whatever it is. If you try to break through a bad habit, or if you try to implement a new habit, or if you have a higher vibratory goal, to add more purpose to your life, to be more fulfilled, or whatever it is that your journey, is guiding you to work on at this very moment. The hardest part is to deal with our failures, to deal with the mess ups, as we called them yesterday, the perceived flaws, the perceived mistakes. And we talked about how this is connected with our self-perception, how we see ourselves. And yesterday we suggested to you that you begin this reflection process by looking at the things that you cannot fully love about yourself, because those are usually the ones that create this gravity downwards, the downward spiral that we all experience from time to time. It's not that we can completely exclude it through reflecting on it, but at least it can put things more into the known realm instead of trying to hide from things or avoid things. Then our ego perceives this as the unknown, and it really doesn't want to go there. And we've talked about what happened when your ego goes into this resistance of not wanting to go there. Okay, then part of your energy gets fragmented, and then you run into all these unexpected issues where your critical inner voice, the negative inner voice that you have, tells you what a failure you are, or how this was a big mistake, or how you should definitely not try something new because it's just going to end up like everything else that you've tried before, something along those lines.
It's going to be all bad.
Yeah.
From that point, yeah.
So this is kind of like the problem that we're facing whenever we try to make changes. And we've already talked about how our ego story, the script that our ego rehearses and rehashes all the time, the way we see ourselves and the way we think others see us, how that can be in the way. And this is something that we want to bring to your awareness now as we go deeper into the energetic ramifications of things like that. And that has to do with how our energy works in regards to resonances. So the overall idea, and you've probably heard this, within other concepts such as law of attraction or something like this, you manifest what you hold in mind. And the ego story is what you hold in mind. Whether it's a positive or negative story doesn't really matter. But we've already learned that we can't really trust the way our ego sees it, because there's a fallacy there. And the fallacy of our ego story is that it is filtered through our emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, energetic state at a given moment. And therefore, we can't really be sure that all this, how we see it and how our ego sort of presents it to us is our real reality, right? Our objective, subjective reality that we talked about yesterday. Anyway, so we already know all this and we've questioned this for you, but we want to go into how you can overcome these things. And I think one of the major things that helped me to understand some of the impedances in my life is that I have to see everything as connected. I have to see that my happiness and my fulfillment and, all these different aspects of my life, the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, also the social, and the energetic, that they all belong together, and that it's inclusive. I can't separate one from another. And the moment I separate is the moment I fragment. And whenever we fragment, then we run into danger of getting stuck in our coping mechanisms, because then we have to do something in order to make this appear still okay for us. All right. So seeing that this journey is really a holistic journey and not just one that makes you ascend or that makes you ultra spiritual in that sense, but that it is a journey that includes, happiness, fulfillment, and abundance on all of these levels, including your financials, by the way. So these things all belong to a balanced and harmonic life, okay? And so in the homework, we'll actually ask you to assess your overall sort of contentment or happiness in your life, dividing this into different areas. But for now, we just really want to go down this road of asking you to really see your life composed of all of these. And a lot of people that are energetically sensitive or empathic, they have a tendency to want to exclude the physical because there's a lot of suffering, in that as energetically sensitives, as long as we are not really trained in some of these first aid energy work technologies, if you will, we often are under the influence of outer energies that affect us in a negative way, physically and emotionally. And so for a long time in the New Age movement, taking care of your body and taking care of your emotion was kind of like put away as well, because it was kind of like the lower part of you, the human part of you. And remember, yesterday we talked about this. When there are aspects of you that you cannot fully love, then you are running into danger of incongruence, and the more incongruence you have, the more ego attachment you'll have.
Well, plus as you let one part drop, so if you drop the physical, you drop the emotional integration, it begins to affect your mind, it begins to affect your physicality, and then it starts to take your energy down. So by what Jona's talking about, by learning that everything affects everything else, so your mental health affects your spiritual health, and your spiritual health affects your physical health, and your physical health affects your ability to integrate and deal with things, you begin to see the importance of the overall wholeness of your health. It's very important to look at all of them.
Yeah, and what we suggest to you is that you look at your overall life, including your physical health or well-being, including your emotional and mental and spiritual well-being, from a little more sort of technical point of view. Because if you look at the whole, you as an energetic being as a whole, if you look at yourself sort of as a sphere or a circle, and you cut certain pieces out, then you become imbalanced. There's an in energy work lingo, we call this, there's a disharmony somehow, and as soon as you've cut a part out, then you got to compensate somehow through doing something else, which would be our coping mechanisms. And so we want you to feel that your overall journey is really one of returning back to wholeness, to the original state, if you will. So wholeness, very close to holiness in the English language, is actually sort of the key element here that can guide us the way to happiness, to fulfillment. It is not so much about, again, becoming perfect in each of these areas. It is about understanding that they're all connected, and that you cannot really live, one in a happy way, fulfilled way, without the other. You can have a lot of money on your bank account, but you can still have a poor health. You can have a great relationship, but a job that's really draining you. And so no matter how we turn it, we have to find this balance in life. And for energetically sensitives, and this is what we wanted to talk to you about today, there is a specific challenge, and that is that you are under the influence not only of your own energetic fluctuations, but also outer energetic fluctuations. I mean, everybody is, but people who are empathic and energetically sensitive simply are a little more sensitive to this, which means they'll feel the effects earlier and more frequently. And so we talk about energetic exposure in this context, meaning that, sometimes even if you have good conditions in your life, you live in a place that really doesn't provide good energetic conditions for you. And so some of your efforts to improve your life or your happiness and fulfillment can be undone by a non-conducive conditions that you've put yourself in.
Yep.
Just a simple example here for someone who's really loves nature, loves animals, and wants to have pets and wants to have a garden, yet lives in a small apartment in a high-rise building in the middle of a large city. Here you can see that there's a slight incongruence. You feel intuitively pulled into certain conditions, and yet your life's choices do not really reflect that. So look at these things in your life where some of your choices do not fully reflect what you truly need or what you truly are attracted to or what you truly want. Because those things, quite frankly, when it comes to like adding more purpose and then also manifesting your higher vibratory goals, they are massive. How do you say, like they can be very counterproductive if you are not really making sure that your life's choices are in congruence, in concordance with what you truly need and what you truly want in life.
And also that in that standpoint, if you aren't quite sure what you need in certain parts of your life, but other parts you do know, you can begin to work on those conditions. So you may not have a clue what you want to do for work or, say, a relationship, but you know what you need to do for your health, or you know what you need to do for financial situations or whatever. You work on the things that you know, and you keep working on that to enhance your overall wholeness. And then the other things begin to fall in line because you're aligning your energy to that congruent state, to the state where you want to be. So by working on the parts that you can feel out, and like we talked about before, I don't have an answer for certain things right now, you're adding to that overall energetic potential that you align to, and that in turn increases your opportunities that you have to even heal the other ones.
Yes, and it will also begin to almost like magically or magnetically attract other things in your life that are conducive for your journey.
Right.
And so here on day 8, we want to introduce the concept of expansive and contractive to you, and how your choices, even if they look as good choices, like say they look like a good choice from a societal standpoint, maybe, like taking on the job that pays more, right? That would be a good example. It may, from an energetic standpoint, not be a very productive choice because, say, the environment in which the job takes place, or the co-worker situation, or the pressure, or many other things can contribute to how our well-being plays out at our workplace or in our family. But if a situation or if a choice turns out to be rather restrictive for you in the end, even though like it pays a lot of money, then we want to basically remind you to put more emphasis on this, because when it comes to reaching higher vibratory goals, you have to kind of align yourself to that higher vibratory state in all of the different areas of your lives. And if you do things that are sort of deeply restricting your energy or making you feel bad or draining you physically, then you're reinforcing a lower vibratory state. So the making better choices from an energetic point of view means to choose the option that produces more expansion for you, that is more expansive over the contractive choice. There's a bit of a reframing here of making good choices, and you may also see that it reframes making mistakes, because sometimes it can, of course, look like a big mistake to take the job that pays less, but brings in a lot more joy for you or a lot more fulfillment. However, on the midterm and long-term perspective, it actually brings in more financial abundance, because your overall alignment now has increased and you're moving congruently towards your higher vibratory goals. This is really important to understand.
Yes.
Yes, and when it comes to the conditions and all these different areas of your life, I mean, not to say that, you have to have it all figured out perfectly. And no, we will all agree to compromises in our lives. We will take on jobs where we know that they're not necessarily conducive for us, that they're contractive for us. But we have to pay our bills, so we will make compromises. But there is a big energetic difference between making those compromises based on unrealistic expectations or ego stories, or based on, a honest reflection and an active choice, where you say, okay, I can do this maybe for a couple of years, only to get myself to a place, where you divide, so to speak, your journey into different steps, and you take it step by step. This would then play into the intention that we talked about yesterday, so you reinforce your intention. You say, yes, I'm doing this right now, but only to get to there. And then once I'm there, then I can make the next best choice. So a way, or the way to practically implement this and to get there, is to first of all understand that whatever you will experience or manifest in the future is more or less determined by the now, by every choice that you make in this very moment. And so the quality of your choices, or the quality, of your manifestations in the future, has to do with the alignment of your choices in that very moment. Okay, so not the result. It has to do with your alignment. In other words, if you make a choice based on loving yourself, based on wanting to provide sort of the best, most conducive and expansive conditions for yourself. You reinforcing, self-love. You reinforcing, a higher vibratory a goal with that, and therefore the manifestations in the future will also vibrate on a higher level. It may take, still, like a couple of years or so for it to fully end up showing as a new result, but you are definitely influencing the way things are going to go for you in the future by paying more attention to what your alignment is at the moment, here in the very now. And as we are energy trainers, and coaches, our job is to show people ways. And I want you to really pay attention now. When you make a choice, no matter what it is, first of all, you have to become aware that you're actually in a choice-making process right now. So you have to really become aware that this is a choice, and that this will influence your future, not so much in the way your critical inner voice or your ego story may play out. So a lot of us are influenced by the fear of making mistakes, for instance. And then we don't want to make choices, or, you know, we run away from choices, or we blame others, or we externalize these things. So the first thing is that you really understand that you have to internalize every choice. Okay. This increases your accountability. It reinforces courage and fearlessness and all these things that we've already talked about. And then you need to be able to, or willing to have an honest look at what is my situation right now and what are my conditions, my outer conditions right now. Okay, so this is the reflective part from yesterday. And then when you make a choice, you have to remind yourself that it's not about the outcome of your choice. It is about the alignment that you have in that very moment. In other words, you never really know how it's going to play out. In fact, if you take this as a new model for your life and say, I can't tell you where this is going to go, but I can tell you where I want it to go and what I'm working on. And then you can develop an attitude that allows you to see that correction is a positive thing. It is a constant sort of reflection, you know, is this a good feedback? You know, is this good or bad? You know, the feedback. And, you know, like sort of checking in with yourself. Do I like this? Is this conducive? Is this contractive or expansive for me? And then to make an adjustment to your choice. So the key element here is the checking in with yourself. Is the going in and asking yourself, okay, how do I truly feel about this right now? Is this what I truly need?
And this actually becomes a lot of fun because you're actually being an active part of the change and the choices and everything. And instead of being kind of reactive and wondering what happened with the time or why you keep repeating, you're actually getting involved in change. And it's a lot of fun because change happens no matter what you do. So you might as well be involved. You might as well be in a little bit more control of it in your life. And it's a lot of fun then. Like you could tell even in your voice.
Yeah. So here in energy work, a big part of the training that we offer people has to do with a person really building or developing this reference feeling for what is contractive and what is expansive. And in practical terms, what this means, to find out really what are the things in life that work for you and what are the things in life that do not work for you. You know, like how can I use this to make myself feel better, for instance, but without it ruining my physical well-being. Like say, you know, going into like a heartbreak and then eating a gallon of ice cream. In the end, you're going to feel like shit. But was it because of the heartbreak or was it because of the gallon of ice cream that you ate? So here are, you know, these kind of choices that we make in conjunction with our coping and our addictions, where we try to sort of cover up for one thing with another thing. And in the end, the whole thing pulls us down into this downward spiral. Yes, Denise. And this comes up for us all the time. And that's why we keep repeating those words such as energetic integrity and congruence and wholeness and balance and harmony, because those are really the ones that can guide us into this place where we can make these choices on our own. You know, we're never going to tell you what the best choice is for you because we simply don't know. This is something that you need to work with yourself. What, you know, is conducive, what is expansive for you and what is not. And then slowly and step by step, in a step-by-step process, eliminating the things that are contractive for yourself, you know, and getting better at it, but never seeing it as a mistake, always looking at it as a refinement process. And so physically, the implementation, I would recommend anybody who's energetically sensitive, but, you know, really anybody, to pay attention to foods, to the very basics in life, you know, water, sleep, and food, because those influence the general makeup of your neurotransmitters, of your hormones, and, you know, of some of that general well-being. And as an energetically sensitive, you are more subjected to that. So if you are sleep deprived or if you are dehydrated, you will tend to feel certain emotions more frequently. And so making better choices in the nutritional and exercise lifestyle direction is definitely something that you need to examine. I've written a lot of articles about this, guys. This is something where I originally came from, nutritional counseling, and there is a whole series of articles on transCODES blog called High Vibrational Living. And I will post the article link here for the high vibrational diet. Okay, so there are strategies and certain types of diets, not like certain dietary philosophies, but certain things that you need to check out with yourself, you know, if this even works for you or not. A lot of people eat things that really contract their energy, and then all the other efforts that they do kind of, it nullifies it. Yes. And on an emotional level, we're getting now to this place of how to build reference feelings. And we talked about feeling things versus figuring things out, you know, like really feeling within. And if you can go there, you know, like breathing through your pain and really allowing yourself to observe, you know, all these things that we've talked about here in these last couple of days, then you will begin to become able to answer the following 2 questions, actually 3. How do I truly feel about this right now? Does this make me feel safe? And does this make me feel loved? And then in a later lesson here, we'll talk about how to identify what you need in order to get there. But right now, it's about checking in with yourself and really answering this question honestly with yourself, so that you can build reference feelings for what feels good, what feels safe, and what makes you feel loved.
Yes, and it's also enhancing that alignment to the heart, because you're going into feeling, you're going into sensing and discernment, and that gets you more and more out of the ego mindset. Very important.
Yeah, and when it comes to the mental approach to this, we recommend you to look at something that comes from life coaching here, and we use this in the Sacred Self-Healing course just to give people an overview over sort of how they can look at these various areas of their lives. And the mental approach, of course, is always a little drier, but there is a cool thing with this chart here, with this graphic here, that we recommend you to work with as part of your homework. And that is that it asks you to scale it. It asks you to rate it. And as you begin to rate, you know, in every of these little life pies, you know, like business, career, financial, health, social, love, family, and so forth, as you rate each and every of these different pie pieces, you will find out that there's either a symmetry or an asymmetry in your life. So these imbalances that we talked about at the beginning, you'll actually be able to visualize them for yourselves. And this can also help you to form a roadmap as to what you need to pay attention to, or where obviously there's the most incongruence, or you know, where this is not fully integrated yet, where you're not really, you know, some of us actually, and this is something that happened to me many times in my life, is where I have an area in my life, like say family, that is my priority, and yet I spend the majority of my time, you know, with career. This is still something that I need to learn how to balance, because at the end of the day, you know, I feel like a bad mom. I feel like I wasn't really there for my family, things like that. Those are incongruences, and they pull me into my ego stories, you know, what a loser I am, and I'm, you know, I'm not good enough, and no matter how hard I try. So that's something that I'm sure you can all relate to, because this is sort of what pulls us into this downward spiral, you know. So we don't want you to be perfect everywhere, and however you rate it for yourself, it's up to you. But we want you to visualize really the imbalances in your life. And so that you can begin to make corrections. And when you make a plan for making corrections, again, you cut yourself some slack. You know, always look right now. We want you to focus on the now. What can I do right now?
Right.
You know, to make myself feel better, to shift my energy into a higher vibratory place. But of course, there's midterm and long-term goals. So if we look at, you know, purpose and fulfillment, you know, that's not, you cannot, you know, from coming from a place of being totally dissatisfied with your life to fulfillment. I mean, that doesn't happen in one day, you know, so that's more of a long-term goal. Mm-hmm. And there may be several adjustments needed in several areas of your life. So you focus on one thing, you know, and then you say, okay, here my intention is to keep working on this and to get better at it, and to not trying to control the outcome too much, to really embrace this evolutionary process as a constant process between, you know, reflecting on things, checking in with yourself, and then making a correction, constant adaptation. Okay, here's a good question from Denise. Where does self-love is based on in the pie, or where would it be seen in that pie, in that sort of life cycle pie? Self-love can be expressed in all areas, and of course we're suggesting you look at it from a holistic perspective, meaning, you know, that all areas are equally, you know, balanced. It doesn't matter whether they are all rated as 2 or 10, you know, but the first thing that you can find self-love is when a person is well-rounded, when they're really paying attention to all these different things. And then, of course, it is the subjective perception, you know, of how strong you feel about this. So for me, for instance, and this is different for everyone, my priorities in life and my values in life have a lot to do with love, relationship, and family. So for me, my self-love will always be more expressed in these quadrants, than someone whose you know, values are you know, more about, you know, maybe money or physical health.
Everybody's different there, but the whole process itself, every part of that could be linked to self-love, because you're actually focusing on making yourself more congruent, more whole, more loving. So that entire process can be self-love, even though, like Jona said, there might be certain areas that are more important to you or someone else.
Yeah, and in a behavioral or social sense, the implementation here can now also include other people, like say your loved ones, you know, your kids or relationship partner. You know, not just to ask yourself what makes me feel safe, what makes me feel loved, but also to ask your partner, and this is very important, don't assume, ask what makes you feel loved, what makes you feel safe, and to go into interaction with this, because our behavior patterns are sometimes, even though our intention is great, our behavior patterns are sometimes absolutely like diametrical opposed to what we actually want to achieve. Right. And so this kind of, you know, reflection, feedback, then going within and then making correction, this also has to happen with our loved ones. This has to happen in interaction with others as well. We cannot really isolate our relationships or our social interactions from self-love or from any of these areas of our lives.
Right.
And then spiritually, it's really important to understand that you let go of whatever your thing is that you hold in mind, what makes you spiritual. Okay? Because all that is externalized. So whatever you think is ultra spiritual is counterproductive to your journey, is counterproductive to balance and health. Because as long as it's externalized, you know, thinking that, oh, it's not spiritual to be angry. Oh, it's not spiritual to have emotions. Oh, it's not spiritual to be physical. or to like baking cakes or to like sex. You know, none of these things can be excluded. They're all part of your journey and as spiritual as they can be. Mm-hmm. And just here, being inspired by your comments, if you meet me on the street and I would have like one sentence to explain to you what spiritual means to me, I would say it's the highest form of self-love. Mm-hmm. It's the expression and living in self-love, which also includes, of course, expressing lovingness for everything around you. You know, all in that sense. That is what spiritual is. Because with spiritual, really, we are addressing the things that are larger than ourselves. And if it's about what kind of pants we're wearing, or how we move or how we talk,
what groups we belong to,
or if we are vegans or not, or any of these things, guys, those are all externalized things. They really don't have anything to do with true spiritualism. All right. And then energetically, here, this would be the second part of your homework. This is a bit more tricky if you're not used to this yet, but those of you who have a little bit of an idea of energy work can do this intuitively, and that is to examine your exposure. What is your energetic exposure, like, say, on a daily level? And when I say exposure, it already has that connotation of hostility in it, because, basically, due to the fact that we live in a society that offers a lower vibratory level than what we want to accomplish, our exposure will always be sort of a little lower than where we want to be, as far as like what comes in from the outside. But there are some things, of course, like, for instance, that we can change through our choices. Taking our own life here, we chose to move from the city into a place that still provides urban infrastructure because we have kids, but at the same time, where we're surrounded by a lot of nature, we have a very good energetic pocket here where we're at, and this is our exposure, as opposed to before we lived in a suburban area. There was a lot of negative energy around us, that we had ward off all day long. So when I talk about exposure, you can more or less look at it like contamination through foods. What is it that you ingest on a physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic level every day that is counterproductive to your journey? All right, so if you need to read up a little more about what is meant with exposure, find this blog series, and there is part 4 is about exposure, energetic exposure. Yes, and so your homework will be 2 things. Will be to just like to get a little bit of an overview, to do the life wheel, right? Those different parts of your life, those areas of your life. And then we really want you to make a list of these things that negatively affect you, your exposure. And then on the other side, we want you to begin a list that allows you to shift your energy, that allows you to sort of out-vibrate whatever it is that you have to deal with. For instance, what always works with myself is taking a walk in nature, or just go outside and take a deep breather, to pet my dog and my cat, or to brush them, or to bake a cake for my kids, or to take a bath. Those are all things that I have found out as reference feelings for myself that can help me to raise my vibration. And so, again, here, 2 columns, another list, one with what negatively affects you, and one on the right side, what are the measures that you can do in a given moment to shift your energy right there, right then.
Yep.
The energy work transmission that works really well with practicing this is the energetic Groundwork Intensive. It's a three energy training sessions actually that practice grounding, centering, and self-clearing in a guided way. And there you can literally learn how to reset and how to sort of shift your energy during these energy sessions. Always, of course, like every energy training session here, observed through our trance coaches, that allows you to get the feedback then from our energy coaches so that you can make your own corrections down the road. Yes, and tomorrow we're going to talk about allowing, okay? And allowing has a lot to do with where we want to go, and that is to really begin to understand how our energy flows, the mechanics of certain things within ourselves. You know, we want to begin to build a vocabulary with you, but we have to pave the road there. And tomorrow, in allowing, we're going to actually talk about energy centers and how they influence some of your perception of life. And this is related to allowing, because you kind of have to be willing to really go into this self-checkup, you know, that's like going within and feeling things. And then you know, just sort of allow that flow to go through you without judging it. So for now, if you don't have any questions, we will let you go, guys. Thank you once more for watching and listening. Please push the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And by the way, if you push that bell button, it will actually send you a notification whenever we go live. As you know, we also have other live streams here. So sometimes that may be interesting. Yes, thank you all.
Thank you.
Coming from all these different places. We're looking forward to seeing you here tomorrow. Bye-bye.